Chapter 1. The stranger at the door. The rain came down like judgment. Elara pressed her weight against the wooden crutch, her left leg throbbing, as she limped through the narrow alley behind the bakery. The cobblestones were slick beneath her boot, treacherous in the dark. She should have been inside already, should have locked the door an hour ago, but old Martin had needed bread for his sick wife, and Elara had never learned to say no to desperation. She recognized it too well in the mirror. The bakery sat wedged between a shuttered herbalist and a boarding house that smelled of cabbage and regret. It wasn't much, a ground floor shop with an oven that leaked smoke and a room upstairs barely large enough for a bed, but it was hers. The only thing her father had left her besides the twisted leg and the creditors who'd circled like crows after his death. Elara fumbled with the key, her fingers stiff from the cold. The rain had soaked through her shawl, plastering dark hair against her face. She was pushing the door open when she heard it, a sound, low, rasping. Wrong. She froze, half turned toward the alley mouth. The gaslights didn't reach this far back. The darkness felt solid, oppressive, broken only by the dim glow spilling from her doorway. Hello? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Silence. Then another sound. A scrape. A wet, labored breath. Every instinct screamed at her to go inside, lock the door, pretend she'd heard nothing. She'd lived in the city long enough to know that curiosity was a luxury the poor couldn't afford. But something in that sound, the raw desperation of it, held her frozen. She took a step forward, crutch clicking against stone. Is someone there? The shape resolved slowly from shadow. A man, or what remained of one, slumped against the alley wall. His clothes were fine once, she could tell even in the dark. A coat of quality wool, now torn and soaked black with something thicker than rain. His head hung forward, dark hair falling over his face. He wasn't moving. Elara's heart kicked against her ribs. She should leave him. People died in alleys every night. It wasn't her concern. She had nothing to spare. Not medicine, not shelter, certainly not safety. But her feet carried her forward anyway, and she hated herself a little for it. Sir? She kept her distance, crutch planted firmly. Do you need help? His head lifted. The breath stopped in her throat. His face was beautiful, impossibly so, carved from pale marble and shadow. High cheekbones, a mouth that might have been sensual if it weren't pressed into a line of agony. But it was his eyes that struck her motionless. Dark as pitch, ancient as tombs, and burning with something between hunger and warning. Go. The word tore out of him, rough as gravel. Go now. She should have. God, she should have run. But blood was spreading beneath him, pooling in the cracks between stones, and his hand pressed against his side trembled with the effort of staying conscious. Whatever he was, whoever he was dying. You're hurt, she said, stupidly. I'm dangerous. Each word seemed to cost him. More than you know. You're bleeding out in an alley. Elara shifted her weight, calculating. I don't think you're dangerous to anyone right now except yourself. Something flickered in those terrible eyes. Surprise perhaps, or bitter amusement. Foolish girl. That's what my father always said. She moved closer slowly, the way one might approach a wounded animal. Can you walk? You don't understand. I understand you'll be dead by morning if you stay here. She held out her free hand. I have a room. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. He stared at her offered hand as if it were a weapon, as if kindness itself might destroy him. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Elara thought of her father, drunk and raging. Of the leg that would never heal right. Of Thomas, who'd promised forever and left when he saw what forever actually looked like. Of every door that had closed in her face when she needed help most. Because someone should, she said simply. For a long moment, he didn't move. Rain pounded down around them, washing blood toward the gutters. Then slowly, he reached up and took her hand. His skin was cold as winter stone, together her crutch clicking, his breathing ragged. They made their way to the bakery door. He was heavier than he looked, his weight pressing against her shoulder, and twice she nearly fell, but she held on, jaw clenched, until they stumbled across the threshold into the flower-scented warmth. She kicked the door shut and guided him to the chair by the cold oven. He collapsed into it, head falling back, throat exposed. In the lamplight, she could see the wound clearly now, a vicious tear across his ribs, still weeping blood. I need to see it, she said, reaching for his coat. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. The speed of it made her gasp. Those dark eyes locked on hers, burning with warning. Don't. His voice was different now, lower, layered with something that made her pulse jump. You've done enough, too much. That wound needs binding, or you'll bleed out on my floor, Elara said, meeting his gaze, despite the fear crawling up her spine. And I just scrubbed these stones yesterday. Another flash of that strange, bitter amusement. His grip on her wrist loosened. You should be afraid of me. I am, she admitted, but I'm more afraid of watching you die. He held her eyes for 3 heartbeats longer. Then his hand fell away, and he leaned back, surrendering. Elara set down her crutch and reached for the bandages she kept for her own wounds. Outside, the rain hammered down, washing away blood and footprints and any evidence that the night had cracked open to swallow them both. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't know what he was, but as she began to strip away his ruined coat, revealing pale skin that shouldn't have been so cold, so perfect, she felt the world tilt beneath her. Nothing would be the same after this. The stranger's eyes closed, and in the lamplight, Elara thought she saw something impossible. His canines, just visible behind parted lips, were far too long to be human. Chapter 2. The vigil wound should have killed him. Elara had seen enough injuries in her 23 years, her father's drunken accidents, the butcher's boy, who'd lost 3 fingers to infection, the woman down the street who'd bled out after childbirth to know what death looked like. This man should be dead, but when she peeled back the torn fabric of his shirt, the gash across his ribs was already closing. She froze, bandage suspended in midair, watching in mute horror as the flesh knit itself together. Slow but unmistakable. The bleeding had stopped entirely, the wound edges drawing inward like a mouth closing. What are you? The words escaped before she could stop them. His eyes remained shut, but his jaw tightened. Something you should have left in the alley. Well, I didn't. Her hands were shaking. She forced them still, pressing the bandage against his side anyway, though it seemed suddenly pointless. And you're in my home now, bleeding or not bleeding on my chair. So you can at least tell me what I've invited inside. A long silence stretched between them. Outside, the rain had softened to a steady whisper against the windows. The clock on the mantel ticked, marking seconds that felt too loud in the small room. When he finally opened his eyes, the weight of his gaze nearly crushed her. I am of House Thorn, he said quietly. 4th bloodline of the Northern Court. My name is Cashin, and I am 347 years old. The bandage slipped from her fingers. She couldn't say it. Couldn't shape her mouth around the word that belonged in children's stories and whispered warnings. Not in her cramped bakery, with flour dust still clinging to the air. Vampire. He said it for her, flat and final. Yes. Elara's good leg gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, crutch clattering beside her, staring at this impossible thing wearing a man's beautiful face. That's not real, she whispered. Vampires aren't real, and yet, he gestured to the wound that was now barely a pink line across perfect, too pale skin. Here I am. Her mind raced, grasping for logic, for reason. The stories say you can't come inside without an invitation. That you turn to dust in sunlight. That you're monsters? A bitter smile curved his mouth. Some of that is true. Some is exaggeration. The rest is propaganda spread by my kind to keep yours afraid. He shifted in the chair, wincing slightly. But the invitation part is real. You asked me inside. You offered your hand. That matters more than you know. I don't understand. No, his eyes tracked over her face, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You don't, but you should understand this. I am bound now by guest law. You offered shelter. I accepted. Until I leave this threshold of my own will, I cannot harm you. It is the oldest law of my kind. Elara's heart was still racing, but something in his tone, solemn, almost formal, steadied her slightly. And if you leave, then the law no longer applies. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, holding her gaze. Which is why I'm telling you now, while I still have some honor left. When dawn comes, you need to bolt that door and not open it for anyone. Not for me. Not for what might be following me. Do you understand? Following you? The fear that had been coiling in her stomach tightened. What's following you? Cashin's expression darkened. House Marrow. The Eastern Court. His hand pressed against his now healed side, fingers splaying as if feeling for damage that was no longer there. We've been at war for 7 years. Tonight, they ambushed a delegation outside the city gates. My companions. He stopped, jaw working. I'm the only one who made it inside the walls. Why attack you here? In the city? Because the treaty forbids direct violence within human territories. His laugh was hollow. We've kept our wars to the shadows, the old places, where your kind doesn't venture. But House Marrow grows bold. They're tired of the old laws. They want to rule openly, and anyone who opposes them must be eliminated. Elara pulled herself up to sit against the table, her twisted leg stretched out before her. The familiar ache in it seemed trivial, now laughable. And you oppose them? I believe humans should be left alone. He met her eyes. I believe in the old ways. Feed only from the willing. Honor guest law. Keep the peace between our worlds. His expression hardened. House Marrow believes in flocks and cattle. They see your kind as prey. Nothing more. The weight of it settled over her. This wasn't just some wounded stranger. This was a war she'd stumbled into, ancient and bloody, and so far beyond her small life that it made her dizzy. I should be terrified, she said softly. You should, but you said you can't hurt me. The law will protect you inside these walls, yes. Cashin stood slowly, testing his weight. He moved with an unnatural grace, like water flowing upward. But my enemies don't honor guest law. If they track me here, if they find you helped me. He turned away, shoulders rigid. You would die screaming, and it would be my fault for accepting your kindness. Elara's throat tightened. She thought of the stranger dying in the alley, of his whispered warning, I'm dangerous. He'd tried to protect her even then. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere far from here. He moved toward the door, then stopped, one hand on the frame. He didn't turn around. I'm sorry I brought this to your doorstep. You deserve better than to be caught in our wars. Wait. The word came out sharper than she intended. He went still. Elara struggled to her feet, reaching for her crutch. Her mind was screaming at her to let him go, to lock the door behind him and pretend this night had never happened. But her heart, her stupid, stubborn heart remembered the weight of him against her shoulder, the way he'd looked at her offered hand as if it were a miracle. It's 3 hours until dawn, she said. You're healed. But you look half dead on your feet. And if they're hunting you, she swallowed hard. Stay until sunrise, rest, then go. Cashin turned slowly. In the lamplight, his face was a study in conflict, surprise and wariness, and something that might have been longing. Why? He asked, just as he had in the alley. Why risk yourself for me? Elara thought of all the doors that had closed in her face. All the times she'd needed help and found only turned backs. Because you tried to warn me away, she said. Because you could have lied about what you are, and you didn't. Because, she met his ancient eyes. Because mercy shouldn't be conditional. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then slowly, he moved away from the door and sank back into the chair. 3 hours, he agreed quietly. Then I'll go, and you'll forget you ever saw me. But they both knew it was already too late for that. Chapter 3. The hours before dawn's leap was impossible. Elara sat at the small table, a cold cup of tea between her hands, watching Cashin while pretending not to. He'd settled into the chair with a natural stillness, head tilted back, eyes closed. But she knew he wasn't sleeping. His chest barely moved, no rise and fall of breath like a living thing should have, because he wasn't living. Not anymore. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself noticing details, the sharp line of his jaw, the way dark hair fell across his forehead, the elegant length of his fingers resting on the chair arms. Beautiful, yes, but wrong in subtle ways. Too pale, too perfect. Like a painting of a man rather than the man himself. You're staring. His voice broke the silence without him opening his eyes. Heat crept up her neck. I'm trying to understand. What's to understand? His lips curved slightly. I'm a dead thing that drinks blood to survive. Rather simple, really. You're not simple. She wrapped her hands tighter around the cup. You talk about laws and courts and honor. Vampires in the stories are just beasts, mindless. Some are. He opened his eyes, studying the ceiling. The young ones, newly turned, can lose themselves to hunger if not properly taught. And there are some who choose to become beasts who enjoy the hunt more than the existence. His jaw tightened. House Marrow makes many of those, but you're different. I'm old, he said it simply, without pride. Age brings control, perspective. I remember what it was to be human. Most of my kind forget, given enough centuries. They stop seeing your kind as people, and start seeing you as. He paused, searching for words. Sustenance, entertainment, toys. Elara's stomach turned. And you see us as what? He turned his head, meeting her eyes directly. As what? You are. Fragile. Worthy of protection. Something flickered in his expression. Worth dying for if necessary. The weight of his gaze made her breath catch. She looked away first, staring into her tea as if it held answers. How does it work? She asked quietly. The feeding. Curious thing, aren't you? You said I deserve to understand what I've invited inside. A pause. Then, fair enough, he shifted in the chair, and for the first time she saw a hint of discomfort cross his features. We need blood to survive, yes, but not as much as the stories claim. Once a week, perhaps twice if we're injured or exerting ourselves. And we don't have to kill, but you can, we can. He didn't flinch from the admission. Draining someone completely is intoxicating. The rush of a life ending, all that energy flooding in. Some of my kind crave it, but it's also wasteful, dangerous. It draws attention, breaks treaties, starts wars. His fingers drummed once against the chair arm. House Thorn forbids it. We feed from the willing, and we stop before harm is done. It's possible to take just enough that the human barely notices, feels dizzy for an hour, then recovers. The willing. Elara's voice came out hoarse. How do you find willing victims? Some humans seek us out. His tone was matter of fact. They crave the sensation our bite carries venom that dulls pain, creates euphoria. Others trade blood for favors, protection, money. And some, he hesitated, some we court, seduce, make them want to give freely. The air between them felt suddenly thick. Elara's pulse beat too loud in her ears. Have you? She stopped, not sure she wanted the answer. Seduced humans? Cashin's expression was unreadable. Yes, it's easier than hunting. More pleasant for everyone involved. A few careful words, a touch, and they offer their throats eagerly. He studied her face. Does that disgust you? She thought about it honestly. I don't know. It feels like manipulation. It is. No shame in his voice, just acknowledgement. But so is every transaction between our kinds. You offer bread for coin, isn't that manipulation? Trading something necessary for survival in exchange for something you want? That's different, is it? He leaned forward slightly. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm telling you how it is. We are predators, miss. He paused. I don't know your name, Elara. It felt strange, offering her name to a creature of nightmares. Elara Grayson. Elara. He tested it, and something about the way he shaped the syllables made her shiver. I'm telling you, Elara, that I am not a hero from your fairy tales. I've killed. I've manipulated. I've taken blood from humans who didn't understand what they were giving. His eyes were hard now, challenging. I'm trying to give you the truth, so you understand what's sitting in your home. She should have been afraid. Every word should have sent her running for the door. But instead, she found herself asking, are you hungry now? The question hung between them like a blade. Cashin went very still. Yes, he said, after a long moment. I lost blood tonight. My body used energy to heal. So yes, I'm hungry. Will you lose control? No, firm and immediate. Guess law aside, I'm not some fledgling who can't master basic impulses. I can ignore hunger for weeks if necessary. He tilted his head. Why do you ask? Elara didn't have a good answer. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper, a need to understand this impossible thing that had crashed into her life. I just wanted to know, she said quietly. They fell into silence again. The clock ticked. Rain pattered softly against the windows. Outside, the night pressed close, hiding whatever horrors might be searching for him. Tell me about the war, she said finally. If I'm at risk anyway, I should at least know why. Cashin studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 7 years ago, House Marrow began pushing for what they call open reign, the right to hunt humans freely, to rule territories openly rather than hiding in shadows. They believe we've grown too cautious, too bound by old laws that no longer serve us. His expression darkened. House Thorn opposed them, as did Houses Corvus and Ashwood. We believe the old treaties kept both our kinds safe, and House Marrow didn't take opposition well. They started small assassinations, raids on border territories, then larger conflicts. Whole bloodlines wiped out, his hands clenched into fists. They want to break the courts, remake them in their image. And anyone who stands in their way, he gestured to his healed wound. Well, you saw. How many of you are there? Elara asked. Vampires, I mean. In the city. In this city? Perhaps 2 dozen. Most stay hidden, following the old ways. But if House Marrow wins, he met her eyes. There are thousands of us across the territories, Elara. If they break the courts, if they convince enough of my kind that humans are just prey, your world will burn. The weight of it settled over her like a shroud. This wasn't just about one wounded vampire in her bakery. This was about everything, the safety of everyone she'd ever known, hanging in a balance she'd never known existed. What can I do? The question sounded absurd even as she asked it. Cashin's expression softened slightly. Survive. Stay out of it. Forget you met me. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. The clock struck 4. 2 hours until dawn. 2 hours until he would leave, and she would be alone with the knowledge that monsters were real and war was coming. Elara stood, reaching for her crutch. I should make bread. The oven needs time to heat. At this hour? Routine helps. She moved toward the work table, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. And people will expect fresh bread in the morning. Even if the world is ending, they'll still want breakfast. Behind her, she heard him shift in the chair. You're a strange woman, Elara Grayson. So I've been told. She began measuring flour, letting the familiar motion steady her. But strange or not, I'm still here. And so are you. For another 2 hours, he reminded her quietly. Then we'll make them count. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her as she worked, and the night pressed closer around them both. Chapter 4. The confession. Bread dough was soft beneath her hands, yielding to the rhythm of kneading. Elara worked in silence, flour dusting her forearms, while Cashin watched from the chair. She could feel his attention like a physical weight, but she didn't mind it. There was something almost companionable about the quiet between them now. Your leg. His voice broke the silence. How did it happen? Her hands stilled for a moment, then resumed their work. Most people pretended not to notice. The ones who did rarely asked directly. My father, she said simply. He came home drunk when I was 12. I was in the way of the stairs. He didn't mean to. She stopped, hating how automatic the excuse sounded. Actually, I don't know if he meant to or not. He was angry about something. The debts, probably. They were always drowning him. And your mother? Dead in childbirth. The baby too. Elara shaped the dough into a round, her movements practiced. It was just the two of us. He tried, in his way, taught me the trade, left me the bakery. But drink has teeth, and it ate him alive. 3 years ago, his heart gave out. I'm sorry. She looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. Why? You didn't know him. No. But I know what it is to be marked by someone else's violence. He gestured to himself. This face, this strength, I didn't choose them. My maker decided I was worth turning, and I've carried that choice for over 3 centuries. Elara set the dough aside to rise and wiped her hands on her apron. Do you regret it? Being what you are? Cashin was quiet for a long moment. Some days, he admitted, watching everyone I loved grow old and die, seeing empires crumble, wars repeat themselves, humanity making the same mistakes century after century. He leaned back, shadows pooling in the hollows of his face. But then I see something worth preserving, someone worth protecting. And I think, perhaps there's purpose in this curse after all. Is that why you fight House Marrow? Purpose? I fight them because someone must. His voice hardened. Because I remember what it was like to be human and helpless. Because he stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. Because what? He turned his face away. Because I failed someone once, a long time ago, and I won't fail again. The pain in his voice was raw, unexpected. Elara moved closer, forgetting caution, and sat down on the floor near his chair. Her bad leg stretched out before her, the familiar ache grounding her. Tell me, she said softly, why would you want to hear old ghosts? Because you're carrying them alone. She met his eyes when he turned to look at her. And because you listened to mine. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then something in his expression cracked, and the words spilled out like blood from a wound. Her name was Isabel. She was human, a physician's daughter in a village I was passing through. This was nearly 200 years ago now. His gaze went distant. House Marrow was expanding their territory, pushing into human lands. I was young then, arrogant, thought I could negotiate peace. I stayed in that village for weeks, trying to broker a treaty. And Isabel, she was kind to me, brought me books, asked questions. She'd figured out what I was. She was clever that way, but she wasn't afraid. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She said I was too polite to be dangerous. That real monsters didn't say please and thank you. Elara's chest tightened. She could already see where this was heading. House Marrow sent a raiding party while I was away. Cashin continued, his voice flat now empty. They killed everyone. The entire village, burned to ash. Isabel's father tried to protect her, and he stopped, swallowing hard. They made it slow, made it hurt, because they knew she mattered to me. Cashin, I found her in the ruins. His hands gripped the chair arms, knuckles white, still alive barely. She looked at me and smiled, said it wasn't my fault. His voice cracked. She died in my arms and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't save her. Couldn't even ease her pain because my venom doesn't work on the dying. Silence fell heavy between them. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving only the drip of water from the eaves. That's why you warned me away, Elara said quietly. In the alley. That's why you keep trying to leave. Yes. He looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes was ancient and deep. Because kindness makes you a target. Because knowing me will paint a mark on your back that House Marrow will see. Because I can't, his voice roughened. I can't watch someone else die for the crime of showing me mercy. Elara reached out slowly and placed her hand over his. His skin was cold, but his fingers turned immediately, gripping hers like a lifeline. I'm not Isabel, she said firmly. I'm not some innocent caught in something she doesn't understand. You've told me the truth, warned me, given me every chance to turn you away. She squeezed his hand. I'm still here. That's my choice. A foolish choice, maybe. She managed a small smile. But I've made worse ones. There was this boy Thomas. He promised to marry me, said my leg didn't matter. Then his family found him a girl with a dowry and 2 working legs, and he couldn't leave fast enough. He was an idiot. He was practical. She shrugged. Who wants to marry a crippled baker's daughter, with nothing to her name? At least he was honest about it in the end. Cashin's grip tightened. His loss, the simple certainty in his voice did something strange to her heart. She'd spent years building walls around that particular hurt, convincing herself she didn't need anyone's approval. But having this ancient, dangerous creature look at her like she mattered, like she was worth something, cracked those walls in ways she hadn't expected. The sun will be up soon, she said, changing the subject before the emotion could overwhelm her. What happens to you in daylight? I don't burn to ash, if that's what you're asking. He released her hand slowly, and she felt the loss of that cold contact. But the sun weakens me, drains my strength, makes me vulnerable. I need darkness to be at full power. And to sleep? Yes. Daylight pulls me toward rest. Not unconsciousness exactly, but something close. He studied her face. I should leave before dawn. Find somewhere safe to hide for the day. Or you could stay here. The words came out before she could stop them. His eyes widened slightly. Elara, the bakery has a cellar. Stone walls. No windows. You'd be safe there. And she forced herself to meet his gaze. And House Marrow doesn't know you're here. They're probably searching the city, looking for you in the usual places vampires hide. Who would think to check a baker's cellar? It's too dangerous. If they find you, they won't find me any safer if you leave. She pushed herself to her feet, reaching for her crutch. You said it yourself, they might already know someone helped you. At least if you're here, I'm not alone. If they come, Cashin stood as well, moving with that unnatural grace. He towered over her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his eyes. You're asking me to put you in more danger, he said quietly. To stay in your home, under your protection. Do you understand what that means? It means I'm not letting you walk out that door to face your enemies alone when you're still weak. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. It means I'm choosing to help you, knowing the risks. It means she swallowed hard. It means I trust you. Something shifted in his expression, surprise and wonder, and something that looked almost like fear. You shouldn't, he whispered. Probably not. She held his gaze. But I do anyway. Outside, the sky was lightening to gray. Dawn was coming, and with it, a choice that would bind them together in ways neither of them fully understood. Cashin closed his eyes briefly, then nodded once. Show me the cellar. Chapter 5. The Watcher's cellar was smaller than Elara remembered. She stood at the bottom of the narrow stairs, lantern raised, surveying the space with fresh eyes. Stone walls, damp and cold. Shelves lined with preserved goods, sacks of flour, a few bottles of her father's wine she'd never had the heart to throw away. And in the corner, a pile of old burlap and canvas she used for wrapping. It's not much, she said, suddenly embarrassed. Cashin moved past her, his presence filling the cramped space. He tested the walls with his palms, examined the ceiling, checked the corners with methodical precision. It's perfect, he said finally. No windows, thick stone, single entrance. I can guard. If they come, I'll hear them before they reach you. And if they come during the day, when the sun, then you run. He turned to face her, expression grave. You don't try to protect me. You don't try to fight. You run through the back alley and you don't stop until you reach the church on Market Street. They won't follow you into sanctified ground. That part's true. Churches, some faiths carry power against us. Not all, but enough. He moved to the corner, already arranging the canvas into something resembling a resting place. Promise me, Elara. If they come when I'm weak, you run. She wanted to argue, but the intensity in his voice stopped her. I promise. Good. He settled onto the makeshift bed, and she was struck by how wrong he looked in her poor cellar, like putting a wolf in a rabbit hutch. You should get some sleep. Real sleep. The day will be harder than you think. What do you mean? House Marrow will send scouts. They'll be looking for me, asking questions, watching for anything unusual. His eyes held hers. Someone may have seen you help me last night. The rain was heavy, but vampires see well in darkness. If they suspect you know something, the fear she'd been holding at bay rushed back in. What should I do? Act normal. Bake your bread. Serve your customers. Lie convincingly if anyone asks questions. A pause. Can you lie, Elara? She thought of Thomas, of telling him the leg didn't hurt when it screamed, of smiling at customers who pitied her, who whispered behind her back, of pretending she wasn't lonely in this bakery that felt more like a tomb. Yes, she said quietly. I can lie. Then do it. He leaned back against the wall, already looking drowsy as dawn's light began to seep through the cracks in the shop above. And bolt the cellar door from your side. Don't open it for anyone but me. Elara climbed the stairs slowly, each step a small goodbye. At the top, she looked back. Cashin's eyes were already closed, his breathing slowing to that unnatural stillness. In the lantern light, he looked like a statue. Beautiful and terrible and completely inhuman. She closed the door and slid the bolt home. The morning customers came as always. Old Martin arrived first, counting out coins for yesterday's bread with trembling hands. Then the widow Petra, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, who always complained the loaves were too small. The butcher's apprentice, the seamstress, the tired mother with 3 children clinging to her skirts. Elara served them all with her usual practiced smile, weighing bread, making change, exchanging the small talk that kept the world turning. No one seemed to notice anything different. No one looked at her with suspicion, but she felt watched. It started as a prickling at the back of her neck during a lull between customers. She glanced at the window and saw nothing but the morning street cobblestones drying in the weak sun, a cart rattling past, people going about their ordinary lives, but the feeling persisted. By midday, she was certain someone was watching the bakery. She caught glimpses through the window, a man in a dark coat lingering too long across the street, a woman with pale skin, who never seemed to enter any of the shops she stood near. They moved with practiced casualness, but Elara had spent years watching people, reading the subtle language of bodies. These weren't ordinary passers-by, they were hunting. Her hands shook as she wrapped a loaf for Mrs. Chen, the laundress. The older woman noticed immediately, her weathered face creasing with concern. You all right, dear? You look pale. Just tired, Elara managed. Bad night's sleep. You work too hard, Mrs. Chen skecked, counting out her coins. A young woman like you should have help. Should have a husband to share the load. I manage fine. The response was automatic, years of practice behind it. Still, the laundress lowered her voice conspiratorially. Though perhaps it's just as well you're unmarried, with all the strange folk about lately. My boarder told me there was some kind of fight last night, down near the East Quarter. Blood on the cobblestones, he said. Elara's stomach dropped. A fight? Gang violence, probably. Or those rich folk with their dueling nonsense. Mrs. Chen gathered her bread. Either way, you keep your doors locked at night, you hear? Can't be too careful. I will. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. The laundress left, and Elara sagged against the counter. Blood on the cobblestones. The ambush Cashin had mentioned. How much did people know? How much had been seen? The door opened, and a chill ran down her spine before she even looked up. The woman who entered was beautiful, devastatingly so, with hair like spilled ink and skin like porcelain. She wore a deep green dress cut in a style that seemed both timeless and expensive. But it was her eyes that made Elara's breath catch, dark as midnight, ancient as tombs, exactly like Cashin's vampire. "Good afternoon." The woman's voice was silk and honey. She moved through the shop with predatory grace, fingers trailing over the counter. "I'm looking for bread, something fresh, of course." Elara forced her voice steady, remembering Cashin's words, lie convincingly. "I have rye, wheat, and sourdough, all baked this morning." "How industrious." The woman smiled, revealing teeth just a shade too white. "You work alone?" "Yes, just me." "No help?" "No. Visitors?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Elara met the vampire's eyes, refusing to look away, refusing to give anything. "No visitors. I can't afford help, and I'm not one for company." She reached for a loaf. "Will the sourdough do?" The woman studied her for a long moment, and Elara felt the weight of that inhuman gaze peeling back her skin, searching for lies. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral, bored, even, the face of someone who'd sold bread 1,000 times and would sell it 1,000 more. Finally, the vampire smiled. "The sourdough will be perfect." Elara wrapped it, named the price, took the coins with hands that didn't shake. The woman moved toward the door, then paused on the threshold. "A word of advice, baker?" She glanced back, and something predatory flickered in her expression. "If you do happen to see anything unusual, it would be wise to report it. House Marrow rewards loyalty and punishes those who shelter our enemies." "I'll keep that in mind," Elara said evenly. The woman left, taking the oppressive presence with her. But Elara knew with cold certainty that she'd just been tested. And while she might have passed, the danger was far from over. She moved to the window and watched the street. The woman joined the man in the dark coat on the corner. They conferred briefly, then separated, but neither left. They were settling in, watching, waiting. Elara locked the shop door and flipped the closed sign, though it was barely past 2. Her customers would wonder, but she didn't care. She limped to the cellar door and pressed her palm against the wood. "Cashin," she whispered. "They're here. They're watching the bakery." No response. He was too deep in day sleep to hear her. She was alone. Elara returned to the window and watched the watchers, her mind racing. Sunset was hours away. Hours where she'd have to maintain the pretense, act normal, give them no reason to suspect. Hours where one wrong move could end everything. She thought of Isabel, dying in Cashin's arms. Of villages burned and lives destroyed. Of the choice she'd made to shelter him, knowing the risks. "I won't fail you," she whispered to the empty shop. "I won't." Outside, the watchers waited, patient as death, and the sun crawled slowly across the sky. Chapter 6. The revelation's afternoon stretched like a wound. Elara forced herself through the motions, cleaning the ovens, sweeping flour from the floorboards, preparing dough for tomorrow. All while the watchers remained stationed outside, their presence a constant pressure against her awareness. She didn't open the shop again. Let them wonder. Let them think her sick, or tired, or simply done for the day. Anything was better than having more of them cross her threshold, asking questions with smiles that didn't reach their dead eyes. By 4 o'clock, her leg was screaming. She'd been on her feet too long, pacing, unable to sit still while danger circled her home. She collapsed into the chair, Cashin's chair, and rubbed the twisted muscle, willing the pain to ease. The cellar door remained sealed, silent. She thought about calling down to him, just to hear a voice that wasn't her own, racing thoughts. But he'd told her not to open it, and the sun was still up, holding him in whatever death-like sleep claimed vampires during daylight. A knock at the door made her jolt upright. Through the window, she saw a young man, barely more than a boy, really, with a messenger's satchel slung across his chest. Human, definitely human. She could tell by the way he shifted his weight, fidgeted with the bag strap, radiated the nervous energy of the living. She opened the door a crack. "Shop's closed. Message for you, miss." He thrust a sealed envelope forward. "From the gentleman across the street. He paid me to deliver it." The gentleman. Elara's blood ran cold. She took the envelope with steady fingers, gave the boy a coin, and closed the door before he could say more. The paper was expensive, cream-colored. The seal pressed with an elaborate crest, a crown of thorns wrapped around a skeletal hand. She broke it open. The handwriting was elegant, each letter formed with precise care. "Miss Grayson, we know you are harboring a fugitive of House Thorn. This is your only warning. Surrender him before sunset, and you will be spared. Shelter him further, and you will share his fate. The choice is yours. House Elara's hands shook as she read it again. Then a third time. They knew, and they were giving her a chance to save herself. All she had to do was betray him. She looked at the cellar door. She could do it. Unbar it. Walk down those steps, and tell Cashin's sleeping form that House Marrow was waiting. He wouldn't wake. Couldn't wake. She could drag him up the stairs herself, if she had the strength, or simply open the door and let them in. He would never know she'd chosen to betray him. He'd never suffer Isabel's fate because of her. She'd be safe. The letter crumpled in her fist. No, she whispered to the empty room. No, she threw the letter into the dying oven fire, and watched it curl and blacken. Whatever happened when the sun set, she wouldn't be the one who gave him up. She'd made her choice in the alley, and she would stand by it, even if it killed her. The sun touched the horizon at 5:30. Elara stood by the cellar door, hand on the bolt, waiting. She'd armed herself with what she could find, a kitchen knife tucked into her apron, her father's old iron poker from the fireplace propped nearby. Laughable weapons against creatures who'd lived for centuries, but they made her feel slightly less helpless. Cashin, she called softly. The sun's setting. They're still outside. A long moment of silence. Then, how many? His voice was rough, still dragged with day sleep, but present, alert. She sagged with relief. Two that I can see. The woman who came in this morning, and a man. There might be more I missed. There are. A pause, and she heard movement below, fabric rustling, footsteps on stone. I can sense them now. 4, maybe 5. They've surrounded the building. They sent a message. Elara's throat tightened. Told me to surrender you before sunset. The footsteps stopped. And I told them to go to hell. She tried to smile, though he couldn't see it. Well, I burned their letter. Same thing. Silence. Then quietly, you foolish, brave woman. You're not the first to call me foolish today. She pressed her forehead against the door. What do we do? You're going to unbar this door and let me out. Then you're going to stand behind me and let me handle this. Cashin, no arguments, Elara. His voice turned sharp. This is what I am. What I was made for. Let me protect you. She slid the bolt back and stepped aside as he emerged. The change in him was startling, the drowsy vulnerability gone, replaced by something cold and lethal. His eyes were darker, his movements precise and predatory. This was the vampire in full, the creature who'd survived 3 centuries of war. He looked at the poker she'd armed herself with and raised an eyebrow. Planning to fight them off? I wasn't going to just wait to die. Something flickered in his expression, approval, perhaps, or admiration. He moved to the window and peered out carefully. The street was empty now, the watchers having retreated into shadows, waiting. They'll come at full dark, he said, in about 20 minutes. They want to be sure I'm awake, at full strength. House Marrow doesn't ambush from the shadows. They want to prove they're superior in open combat. That seems arrogant. It is. But they have numbers, and they know I'm alone. He turned to face her. I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes badly, if I fall, you run. Don't try to help me. Don't look back. His jaw tightened. They might let you live if you claim ignorance. Say I forced my way in, threatened you. Make them believe it. I won't. Promise me. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Promise me you'll save yourself if you get the chance. Elara looked up into his ancient eyes and saw the fear there, not for himself, but for her. The same fear he must have felt watching Isabel die. I promise, she lied. He studied her face, and she knew he didn't believe her. But he nodded anyway, releasing her. Stay away from the windows. When they come, they'll likely breach the front door. I'll meet them there. He moved toward the shop entrance, every line of his body taut with readiness. And Elara, yes, thank you, for everything. Before she could respond, the window shattered, glass exploded inward in a spray of glittering shards. A figure dove through the woman from this morning, moving faster than Elara's eyes could track. Cashin met her in midair, and they collided with a sound like breaking stone. The front door burst open. 2 more vampires poured in, and then the back door splintered. And suddenly the small bakery was full of predators, moving with inhuman speed. And Cashin was in the center of it all. Elara pressed herself against the wall, knife clutched uselessly in her hand. and watched as the world exploded into violence. Cashin fought like something carved from winter cold, precise, devastating. He moved between attackers with impossible grace, his hands finding throats, breaking bones, throwing bodies against walls hard enough to crack plaster. But there were too many, and they kept coming. Coordinating their attacks with practiced efficiency, one of them broke away from the fight. Turning toward Elara with a smile that promised pain, the human pet, the vampire said, voice oily with amusement. Let's see if Thorn will fight harder when you scream. He lunged. Cashin roared a sound that wasn't remotely human and tore himself away from his attackers. He reached Elara in a blur, putting himself between her and the threat, and took a vicious blow meant for her. Across his back, blood bloomed across his shirt, dark, almost black. His knees buckled. No. Elara caught him before he fell, her bad leg, screaming in protest as she took his weight. His skin was cold, too cold, and when he looked at her, his eyes were unfocused. Run, he gasped. Please, Elara, run. But she couldn't, because the vampires were closing in, and she was holding the only person who'd seen her as something more than a crippled baker's daughter. And if she let him die, something fierce and desperate rose in her chest. Get away from him, she snarled. Raising the knife, the vampires laughed, and the darkness swallowed them all. Chapter 7. The blood oath knife was pathetic against immortal flesh, but Elara swung it anyway. The blade caught the nearest vampire across the forearm, a shallow cut that made him hiss more from surprise than pain. But it bought her a second. One precious second where Cashin could drag himself upright, putting his back against the wall, breathing hard despite not needing breath. Brave, the woman from the morning purred, circling them. But foolish. Did you really think a kitchen knife would save you? It's slowing you down. Elara shot back, positioning herself in front of Cashin. Her leg trembled under the strain, but she locked her knees. That's enough. The vampires exchanged amused glances. There were 4 of them now, the woman, to men, and a younger-looking creature with wild eyes, who kept licking his lips as he stared at Elara's throat. House Marrow is feeling generous tonight, the woman continued. Walk away now, human, and we'll make Thorn's death quick. You might even live to see morning. No, the word came out flat, final. Then you'll die with him. The woman's smile turned cruel. We'll make it slow. Make him watch. Maybe he'll remember Isabel. And Cashin moved. Despite his wounds, despite the blood soaking his shirt, he launched himself forward with a snarl of pure rage. The woman barely dodged, and his fist cratered the wall where her head had been. Plaster rained down as he spun, catching one of the men across the jaw with enough force to snap his head sideways, but the others converged. They drove him back, away from Elara, separating them with deliberate precision. She saw his eyes widen, saw him realize they were hurting him, using his need to protect her against him, Cashin. She tried to follow, but the wild-eyed vampire blocked her path, grinning. Just you and me now, little baker. He inhaled deeply. You smelled delicious. Like fear and flour and something sweet. When was the last time you bled? Back away from her. Cashin's voice was ragged with pain and fury. He was pinned against the far wall now, the 3 others holding him, but his eyes blazed. Touch her and I'll tear your throat out with my teeth. You're in no position to make threats. The woman twisted his arm, and Elara heard something crack. Cashin's face went white. This is what happens when you choose humans over your own kind. This weakness. This pathetic stop. Elara's shout surprised even herself. Stop hurting him, please. The wild-eyed vampire laughed. Begging now? Oh, this is rich. Thorn's little pet thinks she can. I'll make a deal. The words tumbled out before she could think them through. Let him go. Take me instead. Every vampire in the room went still. Cashin's voice was hollow with horror. Elara, no. Deal? The woman released Cashin's arm, turning to face Elara with sudden interest. What kind of deal? I don't know. Elara's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break free. Whatever you want. Blood, servitude, information. Just let him go. You're offering yourself? The woman moved closer, predatory grace in every step. Your life for his? Yes, Elara. Don't. Cashin struggled against his captors, desperation making him careless. They held him easily, and the woman ignored him completely. Interesting. She circled Elara slowly, studying her. A crippled baker with nothing to her name, offering herself to save a vampire who's 300 years old. Why? Because he's worth saving. Elara met the woman's dead eyes. And because I've been worth nothing to anyone my whole life. If I can be worth something now worth his life, then that's enough. The silence stretched. Then the woman laughed, a genuine sound of surprise. You mean it? You actually mean it? She glanced at Cashin, whose face was a mask of anguish. Well, Thorn, it seems you found another Isabel. How touching. Don't. Cashin's voice broke. Please? She doesn't understand what she's offering. I understand enough, Elara said quietly. Take the deal or don't. But if you want him dead, you'll have to go through me first. The woman studied them both, something calculating in her expression. Then she raised a hand, and the other vampires released Cashin. He stumbled forward, bloodied and broken, eyes fixed on Elara with an expression she couldn't name. I'll tell you what, the woman said. I'm going to give you a gift, little baker. A lesson about what it means to love a vampire. She pulled a slim dagger from her belt, silver, gleaming in the lamplight. This is a blood oath blade. If Thorn drinks your blood while it's been cut with this, he'll be bound to you, unable to leave your side, compelled to protect you above all else. Even above his precious house, Thorn, Cashin's face drained of what little color remained. No, you can't. It's a curse worse than death for our kind, the woman continued, ignoring him. To be enslaved to a human, to have your will bent to their protection. She offered the blade to Elara. Cut your palm. Let him drink. Bind him to you, and I'll let you both live. Don't listen to her, Cashin gasped. Elara, please. That bond, it would destroy everything I am. Turn me into a slave, a puppet. I'd rather die than, but you won't die, the woman said softly. She'll make sure of that, because that's what the bond does. It keeps you alive, chained to her mortality, forced to watch her age and wither while you remain unchanged. It's the cruelest fate our kind knows. Elara looked at the blade, then at Cashin, still bleeding, still broken, staring at her with pleading eyes. If I don't? She asked. Then we kill you both, slowly, starting with you, so he can watch. The woman's smile was merciless. Choose, little baker. Enslave him and live, or die together. Either way, House Marrow wins. Elara's hand shook as she reached for the blade. Elara, no. Cashin tried to move forward, but the other vampires blocked him. Please, I'm begging you, let me die free. She looked at him, this ancient creature who'd tried so hard to protect her, who carried Isabel's death like a wound that never healed, who'd told her about vampire politics and blood oaths and the weight of immortality, who'd called her brave, who'd made her feel seen. I'm sorry, she whispered, and drew the silver blade across her palm. Blood welled up, dark and red. The scent hit the air, and every vampire in the room tensed. But Elara only had eyes for Cashin as she walked toward him, limping on her bad leg, hand outstretched. Drink, she said softly. Please, let me save you the only way I can. His face twisted with anguish and rage and something that might have been grief. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. She pressed her bleeding palm to his lips. I'm choosing you. However, you'll have me. For a moment, she thought he would refuse, would let them both die rather than accept this terrible gift. But then his eyes closed, and his mouth opened, and he drank. The blood oath snapped into place like a chain. Cashin jerked, his whole body going rigid. His eyes flew open, no longer dark but blazing with an unnatural light. Elara felt something inside her chest twist and lock, binding her to him with threads she couldn't see, but could feel in every nerve. The woman laughed, delighted. There it is. The binding. How does it feel, Thorn? Your precious freedom. Traded for a crippled baker's mercy. Cashin's hands came up to grip Elara's shoulders, not to push her away, but to steady himself. His expression was devastated, lost. What have you done? He whispered. Saved you. Tears burned Elara's eyes. I'm sorry it had to be like this. The woman sheathed her dagger, still smiling. House Marrow will remember this. Thorn of House Thorn, brought low by human sentiment. Again, she gestured to her companions. We're done here. Let's go. You're leaving? Elara couldn't believe it. Our orders were to eliminate Thorn, but a bound vampire is no threat. He's neutered now, harmless. The woman paused at the broken door. Enjoy your pet, little baker. And Thorn, give Isabel my regards in your nightmares. They left in a blur of movement, disappearing into the night. Silence fell over the ruined bakery. Cashin still held Elara's shoulders, his grip gentle, despite his obvious distress. The bond hummed between them, alive and terrible and permanent. I'm sorry, Elara said again, her voice breaking. I didn't know what else to do. He closed his eyes. You saved me. I enslaved you. You saved me, he repeated, firmer now. When he opened his eyes, the blazing light had faded, leaving only exhaustion and something complicated. And I don't know whether to thank you or curse you for it. She tried to smile through the tears. Both probably. His thumb brushed across her cheek, catching a tear. What am I going to do with you? Survive, she whispered. We're going to survive. Outside, the night deepened, and somewhere in the shadows, House Marrow laughed at the price of mercy. Chapter 8. The aftermath. He didn't speak for a long time. Cashin released her slowly, stepping back as if she were made of glass. The bond pulled at Elara's chest, not painful, but present, a constant awareness of him that hadn't been there before. She could feel his exhaustion, his pain, his turmoil, like echoes of her own emotions. Can you feel it too? She asked quietly. Yes. He moved to the broken window, staring out at the empty street. Your fear, your guilt, the ache in your leg. He turned, and his expression was unreadable. Everything. I didn't know it would work both ways. Blood oaths rarely do. He touched his side, where the wound had been, now mostly healed. This one is different, stronger than it should be. I can feel you, like you're part of me. Elara wrapped her bleeding hand in a cloth, wincing. Is that why House Marrow left? Because the bond makes you useless to House Thorn? Partially. Cashin moved through the destroyed bakery, examining the damage with clinical detachment. Broken furniture, shattered glass, holes in the walls. But also because they've made their point. They've shown that I'm compromised, weak, no longer worthy of my house. You're not weak. I'm bound to a human. His voice was flat. In vampire society, that's worse than death. It means I've put one mortal life above the survival of my kind. That I've betrayed everything House Thorn stands for. The words hit her like blows. Then I've ruined you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you've saved me. There's a difference. I don't see how, because I would have died tonight. He turned to face her fully. They would have torn me apart, and you would have watched, and then they would have killed you anyway. At least this way, we're both alive. But at what cost? I don't know yet. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so human it made her chest ache. Blood oaths are ancient magic. I've never been bound by one. Most vampires would rather die than submit to it. Why? Because it changes us. He moved closer, and she could see the conflict warring in his expression. I can feel you, Elara. Your heartbeat is my compass. Your safety is my sole imperative. If you were threatened right now, I would tear apart anyone who stood between us without thought or hesitation. His jaw tightened. That's not protection. That's possession. And I hate that you've made yourself my obsession. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. His voice turned sharp. You could have run when I told you to. Could have let them kill me. Could have saved yourself instead of condemning us both to this. The anger in his tone sparked her own. So I should have just let you die? Watched them murder you and then waited for my turn? Yes. The word came out ragged. Because now you're bound to me, and when House Thorn learns what I've done, what you've made me, they'll come for you. Not to kill you quickly, but to use you. To control me through you. Then we'll deal with House Thorn when they come. You don't understand. He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I can't leave you. The bond won't let me. If you're in danger, I'll feel it. If you're hurt, I'll know. And if you die, he dropped his hands, meeting her eyes. If you die, the bond might destroy me completely. I don't know. No one does. Elara absorbed this, the full weight of what she'd done settling over her. I've trapped you. Yes. And yourself, he added, surprising her. The bond works both ways. You'll feel my hunger, my rage, my darkness. When the sun rises and pulls me toward day sleep, you'll feel that too. We're entangled now, in ways neither of us chose. She thought of Thomas, who'd fled from her damaged leg, of her father, whose violence had marked her, of everyone who'd looked at her and seen only her limitations. And now she'd bound herself to an immortal creature who would feel obligated to protect her, not because he wanted to, but because magic compelled him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know it would be like this. Cashin's expression softened slightly. He crossed to her, taking her wrapped hand gently. You were trying to save me. I understand that. He unwrapped the cloth, examining the cut. It was already clotting. The bleeding slowed. But mercy has consequences, Elara, and we're both going to live with them now. What do we do? First, we clean this wound properly. Bond or no bond, infection is still a threat to you. He moved toward what remained of her kitchen. Then we secure this place as best we can. And tomorrow, he paused. Tomorrow, we figure out how to survive what comes next. They worked in silence, boarding up the broken windows with planks from the ruined furniture, sweeping glass into piles, writing what could be saved. Cashin moved with purpose, but Elara could feel his resentment through the bondolo, simmering anger that had nowhere to go. She understood it, hated that she understood it. The bond gave her insight into his emotions. That felt like violation, even though she was the one who'd created it. I can feel your guilt, he said suddenly, hammering a board into place. Stop. I can't just stop feeling guilty. Try. He stepped back, examining his work. What's done is done. Wallowing in it won't change anything. Is that how you survived 300 years? By not feeling guilty about your choices? He turned to look at her, something flickering in his expression. No, survived by carrying every death, every failure, every person I couldn't save. By letting the guilt shape me into someone who wouldn't make the same mistakes. He set down the hammer. But you didn't make a mistake, Elara. You made a choice. Own it. Even if it was the wrong one? Especially then. She held his gaze, seeing the centuries of grief behind those dark eyes. He'd carried Isabel's death for 200 years. Would he carry this binding the same way? As another burden? Another failure? I don't want to be your Isabel, she said quietly. He went very still. What? I don't want to be someone else you have to watch die. Someone else who haunts you. She straightened, ignoring the protest of her leg. The bond might not let you leave me, but it doesn't control how you feel. You can resent me if you need to. Hate me even. But don't make me a martyr before I'm dead. Cashin stared at her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, he laughed a short, bitter sound. You're impossible. So I've been told. No, he moved closer, and the bond hummed between them. You're impossible because you're right. You're infuriating and stubborn and reckless, and you've turned my entire existence upside down. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But you're not Isabel. You're not some innocent caught in something she didn't understand. You knew the risks, and you chose to save me anyway. Was it worth it? The question came out smaller than she intended. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Ask me again in a century. Despite everything, she smiled. I won't be alive in a century. No, his expression grew shadowed. You won't, and that's the cruelest part of this bond, Elara. I'm going to watch you age. Watch you grow weak. Watch you die. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. Unless. The word hung unspoken between them. You're thinking about turning me, she said. The bond makes me think about it constantly. He dropped his hand. How to keep you alive. How to bind you to me permanently. How to ensure I never lose you. His jaw clenched. But I won't. Turning someone requires their consent, and I won't take that choice from you. Not even to save myself from grief. What if I wanted it? Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't offer that. Not now, when you're exhausted and frightened and bound to me. If you ever want immortality, it has to be your choice. Not the bond's, not mine, yours. Elara nodded slowly. The conversation had ventured into territory she wasn't ready to explore. One impossible choice a night was enough. It's nearly dawn, Cashin said, glancing toward the boarded windows. I need to rest. And you need real sleep. Will the bond affect that? Probably. You might dream of blood and darkness. I might dream of. He trailed off, something complicated crossing his face. I don't know what I'll dream of anymore. She wanted to touch him, to offer comfort, but she wasn't sure if he'd welcome it. The bond had tangled them together, but it hadn't erased the space between them. Cashin? He paused at the cellar door. Thank you. For not hating me. He looked back at her, and his expression was unbearably sad. I couldn't hate you if I tried. That's the problem. Then he was gone, descending into darkness, and Elara was alone with the ruins of her bakery and the strange new presence in her chest that whispered his name with every heartbeat. Chapter 9. The interlude. 3 days passed in strange, quiet tension. Elara woke each morning to the pull of the bond, a gentle tug that told her Cashin was safe in the cellar, suspended in day sleep. She felt his stillness like a held breath, and it unsettled her how quickly she'd learned to recognize the difference between his waking awareness and his death-like rest. The bakery remained closed. She'd hung a sign claiming illness, and her customers had left sympathetic notes and small offerings at the door, bread from competitors, soup from Mrs. Chen, even a bottle of tonic from the apothecary. Their kindness made her throat tight with guilt for the lies, but she couldn't open. Not with the windows still boarded, the walls cracked, and a vampire sleeping in her cellar. Cashin helped her repair what he could after sunset. He worked with silent efficiency, replacing boards, patching plaster, never quite meeting her eyes. The bond hummed between them, awareness without words, but the emotional distance felt vast. On the third night, she couldn't stand it anymore. "You're avoiding me," she said, watching him nail a new shutter into place. His hammer paused mid-swing. "I'm standing 10 feet away. You know what I mean." He finished driving the nail, then set down the hammer with deliberate care. "What do you want me to say, Elara?" "Anything. You've barely spoken to me since," she gestured vaguely. "Since the bond, because every time I look at you, I feel things that aren't mine." His voice was controlled, but she could feel the frustration beneath it through their connection. "Your exhaustion, your loneliness, the ache in your leg that never really stops. And underneath all of it, this constant worry that you've ruined my life, haven't I?" "I don't know yet." He turned to face her fully. "House Thorn will send someone eventually, to verify what House Marrow reported. When they do, I'll have to answer for the bond, for choosing you over my duty. What will happen? Best case? Exile. They'll strip my title, sever my connection to the house, cast me out." His expression was grim. "Worst case? They'll execute us both. You, for binding me for allowing it." Elara's stomach dropped. "Can we run?" "Where?" He laughed without humor. "The vampire courts span continents. There's nowhere we could go that they couldn't eventually find us. And the bond," he pressed a hand to his chest. "The bond won't let me take you far from safety. I can feel your vulnerability like an open wound. Cities feel too dangerous. Wilderness feels too exposed. Everywhere seems like a threat. That sounds like torture." "It is," he said it simply, without accusation, but she flinched anyway. "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing." He moved closer, and the bond pulled tight between them, making her breath catch. "I don't want your apologies, Elara. I want—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "What? What do you want?" "I want to understand why you did it." His eyes were dark, searching. "You barely knew me. I'd brought danger to your door, offered you nothing but warnings to run. Why bind yourself to a stranger? Why choose this?" Elara thought of the question he'd asked in the alley that first night. Why? She'd given him half-truths then. About mercy being unconditional. About doors closing in her face. But there was more to it, something she'd barely admitted to herself. "Because you saw me," she said quietly. "Not the crippled leg. Not the poor baker. Not the spinster everyone pities. You looked at me like I mattered. Like my choices mattered." She held his gaze. "And when House Marrow gave me a choice, enslave you or watch you die, I knew I couldn't live with your death on my conscience. Even if you hated me for it, I don't hate you. The bond won't let you. The bond doesn't control my feelings." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her jaw. "It amplifies them, tangles them with yours, makes everything more intense. But the core emotion that's still mine." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And what I feel for you isn't hate. What is it?" He was quiet for a long moment, his touch gentle against her skin. "I don't know yet. It's too new, too complicated. But it's not hate." The bond sang between them, carrying emotions too complex to name. Gratitude and resentment, fear and fascination, anger and something that might have been longing. Elara leaned into his touch before she could stop herself. "I wish I could give you freedom. I know." His hand fell away. "But we both have to live with what is, not what we wish." That night, after the repairs were done, Cashin taught her about vampire law. They sat at her small table, a candle burning between them, while he explained the intricate politics of the courts, how each house governed territories, made treaties, enforced ancient rules, how the northern court House Thorn's domain had kept peace with humans for nearly 2 centuries. "We're not supposed to interfere in mortal affairs," he said, tracing patterns on the scarred wood. "We feed carefully, hide our nature, let your kind believe we're myths. In exchange, your authorities ignore the occasional disappearance, the bodies drained of blood." He glanced up. "It's not a perfect system, but it's kept both our kinds alive, and House Marrow wants to end that. They want dominion, open rule. They're tired of hiding, tired of pretending humans are anything but prey. His expression darkened. They've been gathering support. Young vampires who never knew the wars, who think power is their birthright. Old ones who've grown bitter watching human civilization expand while we skulk in shadows. How many support them? Enough to make this dangerous. He leaned back. If they win, if they break the courts and seize power, they'll create the very war the old treaties were meant to prevent. Humans will learn we're real. They'll fight back. And thousands will die on both sides. Elara absorbed this, the weight of it pressing down. And you've been fighting them alone? Not alone. House Thorn has allies. But we're losing ground. His fingers drummed against the table. The ambush that night that was meant to kill our delegation before we could reach the Northern Court Summit. We were trying to form a coalition. Without us, he trailed off. They win, eventually. She studied his face in the candlelight, the sharp planes, the ancient eyes, the weight of centuries. What happens now? With the bond? Can you still fight them? I don't know. He met her gaze. The bond compels me to protect you above all else. If House Marrow threatened you, I'd abandon any battle to keep you safe. If House Thorn ordered me to risk you for the greater good, I couldn't do it. His jaw tightened. I've become exactly what they accused me of: compromised. Weak. You're not weak. Then what am I? Human. The word came out before she could think it through. Or as close to human as a vampire can be. You're choosing one person over abstracts. Love over duty. Isn't that what humans do? I'm not human, Elara. His voice was soft but firm. And what I feel for you isn't love. It can't be. The bond amplifies, she interrupted, using his own words. It doesn't create. You said that. He went very still. What are you suggesting? That maybe you cared before the bond. That maybe that's why it took so strongly. She held his gaze. That maybe I'm not just an obligation. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. You're not an obligation, he said finally. You're a complication I never wanted and can't seem to regret. Is that vampire 4 I like you? His lips twitched despite himself. Something like that. The candle flickered, casting dancing shadows across his face. In that moment, he looked less like a predator and more like a man, lonely, weary, and tentatively hopeful. Teach me more, Elara said. About your world. If I'm bound to you, I should understand it. So he did. He told her about feeding etiquette, the rules of consent, the danger of taking too much, the euphoria some humans craved. About day sleep and how sunlight drained their strength. About blood bonds and oaths and the complex hierarchy of houses. He told her about his maker, a woman named Serafini who'd turned him during a plague, thinking immortality was a gift. How she'd taught him control, then walked into the sun. 50 years later, when the weight of eternity became too much, he told her about Isabel. And this time the story came easier, with less pain behind it, and Elara listened, absorbing this impossible new reality, while the bond hummed between them, and the night deepened around her. Small, broken bakery. Dawn soon, Cashin said, eventually, watching the boarded windows as if he could sense the approaching sun. Will you stay here? In the cellar? Where else would I go? He stood, stretching with unconscious grace. The bond won't let me leave you unprotected. And you're safest here, are you? She stood as well, reaching for her crutch. Safe, I mean? As safe as I can be. He moved toward the cellar door, then paused. Elara? Yes? Thank you. For listening. For trying to understand. You don't have to thank me. I know. He smiled slightly. But I wanted to anyway. He descended into darkness, and Elara bolted the door behind him. Already feeling the pull of his approaching day sleep through the bond, she climbed to her small room and lay down on her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the city was waking. Inside, a vampire slept in her cellar, bound to her by magic and something neither of them dared name. And somewhere in the night, House Thorn was coming. Chapter 10. The reckoning came at dusk on the 7th day. Elara felt them before she saw them, a disturbance in the bond that made Cashin jerk awake hours before full darkness. She was kneading dough when the sensation hit, a spike of alarm that wasn't hers flooding through their connection. Cashin? She moved toward the cellar door. Don't. His voice came up the stairs, sharp with warning. Stay where you are. Lock the door. What's wrong? House Thorn. She heard him moving, the rustle of fabric as he dressed. 3 of them, old ones. They're close. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Should I run? Too late. They'll have scouts watching. He appeared at the top of the stairs, his face grim in the fading light. They're here to pass judgment on both of us. Before Elara could respond, someone knocked at the front door. 3 measured strikes, patient, inevitable. Cashin moved to stand between her and the entrance, his body tense with readiness. Let me do the talking. Don't volunteer information. Don't apologize. He glanced back at her. And don't sacrifice yourself again. Promise me. Cashin, promise me. The knock came again. More insistent. I promise, she whispered. He nodded once, then opened the door. 3 vampires stood on her threshold, and they made House Marrow's delegation look like children playing dress-up. These were ancient things, power radiating from them like heat from a forge. The woman in front wore a black gown that seemed to drink the fading light. Behind her, 2 men in formal attire stood like sentinels, their faces carved from marble and shadow. Cashin Thorn, the woman's voice was silk over steel. You've been difficult to locate, Lady Morgana. Cashin bowed slightly respectful but not submissive. I wasn't aware House Thorn was searching for me. Don't be coy. It doesn't suit you. She swept past him without invitation, and Cashin flinched at the breach of guest law. Her eyes found Elara immediately. So this is the human who bound you. How quaint. Elara fought the urge to step back. The woman's gaze felt like being flayed open. Every weakness exposed. She has a name, Cashin said quietly. I'm sure she does. Morgana circled Elara slowly, studying her the way a jeweler might examine a flawed stone. Elara Grayson, baker, crippled, unmarried, no family, no prospects, no particular talents. She paused in front of her. And yet you managed to ensnare one of our finest warriors. Tell me, how did you do it? I offered him shelter. Elara kept her voice steady despite the terror screaming through her veins. When he was wounded and dying. That's all, Morgana repeated mockingly. You offered shelter, and somehow that resulted in a blood oath bond. How convenient. It wasn't. House Marrow's report was quite detailed. Morgana turned to Cashin. They claim you fought to protect her. That when given the choice between freedom and her life, you chose her. That she bound you with a blood oath blade to save you from execution. Her expression was unreadable. Is this accurate? Cashin's jaw tightened. Yes. And you permitted this binding? Accepted her blood willingly? I was given no choice. It was the bond or death. There is always a choice. Cashin, Morgana's voice turned cold. You could have refused. Could have died with honor intact. Instead, you allowed yourself to be enslaved to a mortal. She gestured to Elara dismissively. This creature who offers you nothing but weakness and mortality. She saved my life, Cashin said. And Elara felt his anger through the bond controlled but burning hot beneath the surface. She compromised you. Morgana moved closer to him. You are bound now. Unable to fulfill your duties to House Thorn. Unable to fight effectively against House Marrow. Unable to put the survival of our kind above one fragile human. Her eyes narrowed. You have become a liability. The word hung in the air like a blade. What is House Thorn's judgment? Cashin asked quietly. The elders have deliberated. Morgana clasped her hands before her. They recognize that you acted under duress. That House Marrow orchestrated this situation specifically to neutralize you. However, she paused. The bond remains. You are compromised. And compromised warriors cannot serve. Exiled then? Not exactly. Morgana's smile was sharp. House Thorn is prepared to offer you a choice. The bond can be broken. There are rituals, ancient and painful, but effective. Submit to the breaking, and you will be restored to your position. Your honor intact, your service continued. Elara's breath caught. You can break it? Of course. Morgana didn't even look at her. Blood oath bonds are powerful, but they're not unbreakable. It requires the death of one party, or a ritual of severance performed by elder vampires. She gestured to her companions. We have the knowledge, the power. We can free Cashin from your chains. Hope and horror warred in Elara's chest. Freedom for him. Everything he'd lost restored. All she had to do was let them break the bond. All she had to do was give him up. What happens to her? Cashin asked. If we break the bond, the human? Morgana shrugged. She lives. We have no quarrel with her. She was merely a pawn in House Marrow's game. You're lying. The words came out before Elara could stop them. Morgana's gaze snapped to her, sharp as a whip. Excuse me? You're lying, Elara repeated, her heart hammering. If you break the bond, you'll kill me. That's how it works. isn't it? The ritual requires one party to die. Morgana's smile widened. Clever girl. You've been learning vampire lore. She turned back to Cashin. She's correct. The ritual of severance requires the human's death. Quick, painless, and then you would be free. No, Cashin's voice was flat, final. No? Morgana raised an eyebrow. You would choose continued bondage over freedom? Over your house? I won't let you kill her, even if it means exile? Even if it means losing everything you've worked for, everything you are? Yes. He moved to stand beside Elara, close enough that their arms brushed. I choose her. Elara's throat tightened. She could feel his resolve through the bond, absolute, unwavering. He was throwing away centuries of service, his position, his honor. For her. Cashin, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He didn't look at her, his eyes locked on Morgana. I choose her. Whatever that costs. Morgana studied them both for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Well, this is unexpected. What judgment does House Thorn pass? Cashin asked. Exile, Morgana said simply. Effective immediately. You are no longer of House Thorn. Your titles are stripped. Your territories forfeit. Your alliance is dissolved. You are severed from us. Her expression was unreadable. And yet, Cashin, the elders wanted me to tell you something. What? That they understand. That if they had been in your position, bound to someone, they'd come to care for, they might have made the same choice. Her voice softened slightly. You were always too human for your own good. Perhaps that's not entirely a weakness. Cashin said nothing. But Elara felt his surprise through the bond. However, Morgana continued. Exile means you are no longer under House Thorn's protection. If House Marrow comes for you and we cannot help you. You're on your own. I understand. Do you? Morgana moved toward the door. Because House Marrow won't stop with exile. They'll want you dead. And they'll use her to draw you out, to make you careless. The bond makes you vulnerable, Cashin. Fatally so. I'll manage. For her sake. I hope you do. Morgana paused at the threshold. One more thing. The elders asked me to give you this. She held out a small leather pouch. Financial resources. False documents. Enough to disappear, if you're clever about it. Cashin took the pouch slowly, surprise flickering across his face. Why? Because you served House Thorn faithfully for over 3 centuries. Because you fought for what you believed in. Because she glanced at Elara. Because even in exile, you're still one of ours. We don't forget that easily. She left without another word, her companions following. The door closed behind them, and silence filled the bakery. Cashin stood frozen, staring at the pouch in his hands. You chose me, Elara whispered. Yes, you gave up everything. Yes. He finally looked at her, and his expression was raw. I gave up House Thorn, but I gained. He stopped, searching for words. I gained something I didn't know I needed. What? He reached out, cupping her face gently. A reason to keep fighting. Not for duty, not for politics, but for one person who saw me as more than a weapon. Tears burned Elara's eyes. What do we do now? We run. He smiled slightly. Together, for as long as we can. She leaned into his touch, and the bond sang between them, no longer a chain, but a thread binding them by choice. Outside, night fell, and somewhere House Marrow was hunting, but for this moment, they had each other, and it was enough.